margarita machine, one or the other. It is Fiesta in San Antonio now. Happy Fiesta. Don't forget, it started yesterday. It's a good time as a caregiver to go have a good time. Don't drink and drive. One of the things I wanted to kind of, before I start this topic, one of the things I wanted to mention from my first presentation was to talk about sundown syndrome, for those of you who weren't aware of what that was. And as a matter of fact, a lot of research has been done on sundown, and really nobody really knows what causes it. It has something to do with the circadian rhythm of our bodies being a 24-hour clock. And most people, when the sun starts to go down, the lighting starts to change outside. It's when you start to see some of these behaviors, which is agitation, irritability. That's when they get worse at that time of day. Usually, when I worked in the hospital, we saw it around 3 or 4 o'clock. But some of the things that can cause the sundowner or make it worse can actually be if the person is in pain. That's something I had mentioned it as well. Also, keep in mind too, constipation is something that can aggravate anybody, but really you need to make sure that that's not an issue for the person you're caring for as well. Medications, side effects from medications, those kind of things, infections. But one of the things I also want to mention, and this is an issue, try to reduce the number of naps a person takes during the day. Because then you're going to have issues at night. And you know what, if you see them starting to fall asleep, remember, it could be because they're bored, it could be because they're tired, and I don't think there's anything wrong with an older person or anyone needing to take a nap, but 2 or 3 hour naps during the day is way too long, and then try to get them to go to sleep at night. So we don't want that to happen. Also, don't try to limit the caffeine. Give them decaf if you can, if any at all. Same thing with tea. And also not to try to give them heavy snacks late at night. Those are kind of some of the things that can help you in that regard. But anyway, I just wanted to reiterate that a little bit. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ethics in regards to, now I mean, for some people, you start talking about end-of-life care, and let me just make a couple of comments regarding that. You know, we all have 2 things in common in this life as human beings. We're all going to get older, and by the time you leave here today, you'll be 8 hours older. So, I don't think anybody in this room right now is getting younger, and if you are, I'll have whatever you're drinking. But and we're all going to die, hopefully in that order. And so it's important that we start to talk about this in regards to the person that we're caring for with Alzheimer's disease or form of dementia, because that is considered to be, especially once you get to the end stages, I mean, it's a progressive disease, and we do have to start talking about end-of-life care. And so a lot of people do not like to talk about this. A lot of people don't like to hear about it, but it's the reality of our own lives, and it's part of the circle of life. So now, we know that dementia is a terminal disease, and you see that here. Other diseases such as cancer, all of those are terminal. If the cancer is incurable, it's a terminal disease as well. I mean, like I said, we're all going to die of something or some way, and there's nothing we can do to stop that. You can spend millions of dollars on plastic surgery to try to keep looking young, but then you'll just end up looking like Joan Rivers. And then everybody will talk about you when you go by your casket, like, oh my God, what happened to this person? You know, that's what my mother's always worried about. I don't want anybody to talk about me when I'm in my casket. Okay, if that's going to bother you, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. But somehow I think it might still bother her. So we know that's just a destruction in so many different ways of the brain. And also that person's self-identity is at stake. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit, the losses that the person begins to experience later on in life. And how do we make sure that the person, and this is not just true of end-of-life care in regards to the later stages, but it's really end-of-life care now. how do we make sure that that person's dignity remains intact? And hopefully you attempt and try to do that when the person is, when you're bathing them, when you're dressing them, when you're taking care of them, that they still feel like that their dignity is intact and it's part of it. I heard a story at a seminar I went to where this woman, they had Thanksgiving dinner and they had, I don't know, a lot of family members over, and a couple of the nieces and grandchildren had brought friends from school, from college, to come in there to eat. And they all sat down to eat. Their grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, was 92, sat down to eat, and then left wandered off to go to her room to get something, came back completely nude into the dining room. And there's really nothing you can do at that point besides lose your appetite, but there's really nothing else that you can do in regards to the things happening except helping her to kind of maintain her dignity, I guess, at that particular point. Kind of all the different age groups and the embarrassment that they're going to feel. But a lot of times our reaction to that would be to kind of yell like, you know, "Mother, what are you doing?" and "Oh my God," and "Where are your clothes?" That you kind of slowly kind of get up and maybe put a blanket around her or walk her to her room, and not to make a kind of big deal of it. Those are kind of some of the little things that you start to do to kind of maintain that dignity for that person. So there's also, you have to think about several things. One is altruism, and the other one is love. And this is, I put this in here, and it's a quote because it's this really incredible book that I read years ago, and actually I was looking for it just a couple of days ago, but it's The Moral Challenge of Alzheimer's Disease and the Ethical Issues from Diagnosis to Dying. It's on the bottom down here. And his name is Stephen Post, so that's really the best way to find that. The basic principle of altruism is that man has no right to exist for his own sake, that service to others is the only justification of his existence, and that self-sacrifice is his highest moral duty, virtue, and value. Now, I guess I think that I put that in there because I think everybody kind of thinks different, might think different of what it's like to care for someone else, or the responsibility that we have for one another as humans in regards to being kind and helping anyone when we can and being open to that. But it's really not altruism if we let everybody know that we're doing it. And a lot of times there's those people, and you know who they are, who like to tell everybody how hard they're working and how much they're doing. And all of that kind of seems to be a part of them taking care of someone that they're taking care of, when in fact you realize at that particular point that they're not really doing it selflessly, but they want everybody to know that they're doing it selflessly and how difficult it is. And you might have kind of some of those same struggles for yourself. And that's what I try to say. At some point in caregiving, there's a real big difference, or you begin to lose the care and you're just doing the giving. Does that make sense? You're just doing the giving and you lose the care. There's you've seen those situations in hospitals where someone comes in, and a nurse or a nurse's aide, and they kind of do stuff to the patient. They don't say anything to them, and they take care of them, and they never ever said anything to them the whole time they were in there. That's just the giving part. And we get to where we're doing this so much that we lose sight of that person's individuality. We lose sight of our own individuality too, and that we forget to start caring for ourselves and taking care of ourselves. That whole idea, for those of you, and I'm not going to speak too long about this, but honoring thy mother and thy father, in some regards, this is actually a little bit humor in it, but it was easier 200 years ago because everybody died before they were 50. So in some regard, and maybe that's why this was written. I don't think so. I'm not going to get out. That was just a joke, and I hope my priest isn't here, and I'm sorry. But I like to bring that up. The last time we did this talk, we did it, and there were a lot of nuns in the room. I don't know, we did it in San Antonio, and I saw several of them. you know, giving me the eye. And maybe not the evil eye, but they were giving me the eye, so it made me a little bit nervous. But I think what I mean by that is that we're not prepared as a society. We're really not prepared. It's very scary. The fastest growing aging population are the individuals over the age of 85. And we're not prepared, even those of us in this room now. How many of you have had conversations with your children or your siblings and said, this is what I want to happen if and when this happens to me? I was just talking to somebody about that a second ago. She told me, this is what I told my kids, you put me in a nursing home, come visit me every once in a while. If you really mean that, record it. I want a video. Do a selfie. And tell me that's what you're going to do, because you're going to change your mind. And you may or may not, but if you don't, I want a selfie of it. I want to hear about it. I want to show it to all the siblings. Everybody needs to see it. Everyone needs to see it. Everyone needs to hear it. Everyone needs to hear the plans. And if you have plans to live in one of those fancy high-rise retirement centers, then show me the money. Show me the money. It's not Tom Cruise was talking about sports. I'm talking about nursing home and long-term care. Show me the money. Then show us how you plan to take care of this. And you know what? Quit telling everybody that I saved my money so I can leave my kids something. Those days are gone now, because you're not dying at 50. I know it's nice. You want to leave your kids something. I don't know. Leave them the dishes. Leave them the dishes. Leave them a pair of earrings. Give them the tools. Give them your fishing pole. You need that cash so that you can live in the way in which you want. We have to start having these conversations right now. Every single person here should be having those conversations. Every single person needs to write it down, videotape it, have a meeting, bring your kids, do whatever you need to do, and let them know. And if one of you is deciding in this room that your decision is that you want your kids to take care of you, you better figure out which one it's going to be, because it's not going to be all of them. And you better let them know so they can move. They can apply for a job in Australia or Jamaica or something like that. Give me their number and I'll tell them to run. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm telling you, you got to start having these conversations. This is why all this is happening, because we didn't have that conversation. And the belief is, and especially culturally, the belief is, in some cultures, I know who's going to take care of me. I took care of you, now you have to take care of me. The problem is the plans weren't made of how that's going to happen. You know, when you go to a nursing home or assisted living facility or a board and care facility or a personal care home, you know it's not just one person taking care of them all the time. Why? It's 24/7. But how come it's okay for you to do it 24/7? If it was okay for everybody, then when you went to one of those facilities, there'd be one person taking care of you. There's a reason that that happens, because it takes that many people to do that job. So keep that in mind. Overcome the stigma associated with dementia. How do be around, that's not a misprint, in case you're wondering, around someone with dementia. We talked about that before. How are you going to be? You can't try to manage that and manage yourself and try to provide some level of dignity for that person in their end-of-life care if you haven't figured that out for yourself yet. Because I guarantee you, everyone in here who's a caregiver, this is not how you planned it for this time in your life. And we also know that things happen. Life happens. It does. People get sick. People get dementia. You get sick. Things happen, and we have to deal with those changes in our life. We don't want it to be that way. That's not the way that we planned it. But those are the things that we have to begin to face and to have the resiliency to be able to do so. How do we seek the remaining capacities? How do we start to find, this is what I was talking about earlier, how do we look for those things that they still can do and talk about? You kind of have to do those little experiments on a daily basis. Find out what it is they can do, what their strengths are. And you probably are listening to me going, okay, I'm done with this woman talking about more things that I have to do to figure this out myself. I was kind of just hoping she would just tell me something else about how horrible everything is and how she understands, and I do. But in order to make this successful for you, it takes some work. And when you're done, and then getting to a point at the end of this end of dementia where you might have to start thinking about placement or something different, then you're going to be ready for that. Because I don't know if any of you have heard about that little thing that our parents have done to us at some time in our life or will do. I think they put it in our cereal in the form of milk, but it's called guilt. And we live with it, and we live with it. And in the Mexican-American culture, it's really who we are. We can't live without it. We can't go anywhere without it. We can't think about it without it. It's like our best invisible friend. Who's your invisible friend? Guilt. I take it with me everywhere. I especially take it with me when I visit my parents. They make sure. I used to tell my mother, I think there's a secret place that you mothers would go to. I didn't mean you mothers, but I meant you mothers. That you would go to in the middle of the night and meet in room 204 in some secret place somewhere and talk about, what did you try for your daughter this week? Oh, I tried. Oh, you should try that. Because it really worked. She cried for 10 days. She felt guilty. She brought me dinner every night. It worked. But those are kind of some of the things that you have to start dealing with and start letting go of. By the way, there's a therapist who said that guilt is upside down anger. So really, it's no longer guilt at some point. It turns into anger. And then anger, you're walking around with it, and guess what? And then you're the caregiver. And then it's Freddy Krueger taking care of mom. Just turns into a psycho movie in the middle of the shower scene. Carefully consider ethical issues arising over the progression of the disease, such as you get to a point when you get to the end of life where you have to start thinking of invasive treatments. Have you had this discussion with your siblings or your spouses as to what they want to have happen? Also, just what do you know about it? Do you have any insight into it? What are your thoughts and your feelings? Have these discussions. Whatever you decide is best, whatever you think that needs to happen, whether if you're the person who is still able to make those decisions, even if you are the person listening to those people and you don't agree with them, you think it's wrong or whatever your feelings are should never impact their decision. It needs to be, it's an individual, personalized decision. And once again, all those crazy siblings, bring them together. Because everybody changes their mind in the hospital. All the siblings are there and everybody's not agreeing. And then what happens is there's that one sibling over there getting the dishes and the tools and the fishing poles before everybody comes back to the house because they think mom's about to croak. Right? I'll go to mom's. Yeah, I'll go to mom's. I'll stay there for a while. Don't worry about it. I'm taking boxes. The focus always has to be on comfort care, pain management, and behavioral intervention. Aren't those some of the things that you've been talking about today? That's what the focus has to be on. Those are the kind of things that you're going to be doing. That's why you come to things like this, to learn it and to know more about it. Care and respect for the whole person. How many of you have ever been a patient in the hospital? Okay, because now we don't go to the hospital and everybody wants to take care of you at home now. I mean, you have to be like, I don't know what has to happen to you before you get in the hospital anymore. But massive heart attack, open heart surgery, snake bite, I don't know. But the whole whole person. So you have to think about them emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Those are the things you have to think about in taking care of the whole person. The person you're caring for at home, that's what you have to think about for them. Now, at some point, it's not easy for them to get out of the house for whatever reasons. But if this is a person who went to church every Sunday or whatever day they went to church, it's important for you to continue to take them to church. At some point, they may not be able to go anymore for whatever reasons. Maybe you'll have to bring someone in to help provide that spiritual support for them or that religious support. But let me just tell you, you know, when you start talking about church, over 65% of parishioners in the United States are over the age of 65. 68% of people who vote in all elections are over the age of 65. Voting and going to church. So those are things that are still important. So I would tell Mom, do you want me to do like an absentee vote for you? But first I need to know who you're voting for, and I'll decide if I'm going to turn it in. So now, those things were important to my mother and father. They both loved to vote. It was important to them. They both loved to go to church. Those are kind of things that are still important for my mother, and she's still very a part of. She can't remember when Lent is, but we tell her when it's Lent, and then she knows what to do. Just leave her alone. You just got to tell her when it's over. And she's good to go, or else she's going to do Lent for the rest of her life. But as far as that goes, I mean, that's what happens. You know, I meant to share this with this group when I had my mom last week. She asked me a very interesting question that had never been asked before. It's a little bit of a sad question, but I'll share it with you. She said, when do you think it'll happen for me that I won't be able, and then she said that I won't be able, and she said that I'll lose it. When am I going to go crazy? And that was a really important question for her. And so I knew that I couldn't answer it in a very long kind of academic way, and I kind of told her, it's too late, it already happened, and no. But it happened, I think, when I was 16, I remember. But I think it's those are the kind of things that my mother with dementia is thinking about. And so I think those are the kind of things when we think of dignity. I know that that's the thing that scares her and makes her nervous. Over Thanksgiving, she tried to jump out of the car on 1604. It was a horrible experience for me in regards to the fact it was scary. I overreacted because she scared me really bad. My niece luckily was with me in the back. She was in the back seat, was able to hold her. I was holding on to my mom's coat. So we were able to pull off the road and get into like a parking lot. She had just lost it. And I think that particular time for us was a time that those kind of moments are the moments that help you really kind of start to see where you're at with all this. So I think that, you know, and her asking those particular questions and helping her to kind of still feel safe, because she doesn't feel safe and she worries about when it's going to happen. I want to make sure that she feels safe. And for some reason that's always been, because her great-grandmother had Alzheimer's. Now, I mean, her grandmother was my great-grandmother. And so she was in a little room in the back of my grandmother's house for years. Nobody would ever go back there. She would come out and she scared us. That's what we did. How many of you know those stories? I mean, she would come out and we were scared of her because they'd say, no, she's not been okay since her husband died. Well, now I know what it was. She had Alzheimer's. She was demented, and everybody just kind of treated her like she was this crazy old lady who lived in the back. She was very clean, and they took really good care of her, but they protected her from the rest of us. I mean, you have to decide how you're going to do that. Well, let's talk. Respect those who are experiencing the memory loss, behavioral symptoms, incontinence, physical debilitation. All of those things nobody wants to have to deal with any of those things on a personal level. Do you know what I'm saying? And after you reach a certain age, you know, I told people, I said, you know, after 50 I got these, and then you started coughing and other things started happening to me. I mean, those are things that I never thought, you ladies know what I'm talking about. Those are things I never thought would ever happen to me. But they happen to me now. Not all the time. I have to use these all the times, but I worry about coughing now. I'll wait and cough when I get home. I mean, I don't even cough anymore. Try not to cough in public. It's maintaining that level of dignity for yourself. And thinking it's some, you know, of course now I'm doing my Kegels right now, I'm counting the cough. So that kind of... You gotta do them whenever you think about them. That's what my doctor said. Anyway. So you have to have those conversations with people too about how to kind of maintain that level of dignity for yourself and for the person that you're caring for. And those are all the things that you have to start thinking about, even the behavioral symptoms. You know, a lot of times you know what it's like to feel shamed when someone shames you for something you've done. And so you don't want to shame that person in any way that you can. You want to make it not a big deal at all. I'll take care of that. Now, one of the things, there are two things in having grown up that I could never really handle. At one point I was going to be a nurse, and these are probably two of the reasons I'm not. One, I don't like broken bones. I don't care even a broken finger. It makes me want to pass out. So I don't like to cut chicken up. And two, I don't like poop. Only animal, but I can't do the human thing. And some people, it doesn't bother them. Some people are like, oh, I do it with my eyes closed. So when my mother first started having some issues, she came to my house, and luckily I had someone that was there that could help me with it, but I just, you know, I just couldn't deal with it. I really, literally could not deal with it. Now, a couple things have to happen here. I have to learn to deal with it. But also, my mother didn't want me to be the one to deal with it. She'd rather have someone else help her. Because it was difficult for her to let me see her in that condition. So, you know, she does things like puts it all in a bag and then gets whatever she can to wipe and washes everything in the bathroom sink. And she still remembers how to clean, and then she cleans the walls and the toilet and the sink and everything with my towels. And I'm just ready to buy another house. I mean, you get to that point, like, oh my gosh, I mean, it's just, I mean, this is why I didn't have kids, because I couldn't leave them at home for the weekend, because I had to change their diapers. If I can't put a bowl in front of them like I do my cats, I'd rather not have any else thing living there. But it's the same concept of remaining that dignity, and part of it is me not. I saw myself going, Mom, did you just wipe the sink with my towel? I was so upset. Don't wipe the sink with my towels. And she's like, I didn't. And I'm looking at the dirty towels on the floor. I was so upset by the whole thing as I was trying not to vomit at the same time. You know, and then I'm like, where are the clothes? Because I knew she hadn't taken them to wash them, and with the vinegar and all that stuff you use. So how do I maintain her dignity at that time and maintain my own sense of not wanting to pass out? I don't know. I didn't do it at that particular moment, but I know that that's something I have to work on, because I know that that's coming. I mean, sometimes, you know, when she was going through that, sometimes driving home, you're like, oh my gosh, she's in the back seat and she just, you know she just did something terrible. And I just want to drive her through the car wash and put her on top of the car and just run through there so I don't have to see it. You know what I'm saying? Here's another pair of pants, put them on. Oh my gosh, just and I know a lot of people can deal with it. You just get through it, right? You just do it. But right now I'm dealing with the fact that she doesn't want me to see her doing it. She's hiding it. You know, and right now that probably works for both of us to some extent. It's in her suitcase somewhere and she takes it to my brother and he can have it. Okay, don't tell anybody I said that. Here we go to, at times the cognitively strong may choose to punish the deeply forgetful. And part of that is resentment, exhaustion, limited support. We have to think about it. I mean, we have this, as human beings, we have this, not this desire, and we don't really want to do it, but sometimes we just accidentally start punishing them. We lose control of ourselves with that. We start punishing it, and then you realize you're doing it, and then you feel guilty, and guilt is upside down anger, and anger is upside down fear, and fear is upside down anxiety, and oh my gosh, and then you're ready to be admitted to a psych hospital. All of the things that you begin to experience, all related to this little old person in front of you has just turned your life upside down. And feeling like as if everything has changed because, and you love this person and you don't want this to be happening to them and you don't want this to be happening to you and you don't know what to do. But we have to think about that dignity. And we don't want to be like that smiling lady who everything's perfect. You know, we don't want to be like that person either. We want to be able to realize the reality of it. Ronald Reagan did us a favor. He announced he had Alzheimer's disease. And that really began to change the way in which the disease was looked at, not only in the United States, but worldwide. He brought the disease to reality. He unveiled the secrecy and shame. And you know, secrecy and shame is something that my family has lived by. I didn't know that my father had type 1 diabetes until I was in high school. He had it since he was 16 years old. It was a secret because the devil had given it to him. Because he made a promise to the Virgen de Guadalupe and he broke that promise. And so I was like, oh man, I'm going to wear her cross. I'm going to wear her around I'm going to everything. I was so afraid. That's what they taught us. That's what we believed, and some people still believe that in those things. He was so ashamed of it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. You'd be surprised how many people out in the community that you talk to about dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and they're like, I know what you're talking about. Either they're going through it, or they know someone who is, or a family member who is, and you can have that conversation with them about it. It doesn't have to be a secret. And neither is the way that you're acting, because God knows I'm over here telling you all my stuff. I mean, you know, this is free therapy for me, so you didn't have to pay anything to see me, so you get to listen to me tell you all my problems. Attention, empathy, and compassion to disease is what Ronald Reagan and what they brought to us, and that's what we continue to try to do in the Alzheimer's Association. Now, we are, not just the United States, but we are a culture who does not like the idea of being dependent. Now, me, myself, I've always relied on the kindness of strangers. I'm the first one to let people do stuff for me. Now, I don't know that I'd be that way depending on what the situation was. If I was wiping poop on the bathroom walls, I might be doing the same thing my mother was doing. It's cost a lot of money. That's the other thing we're not prepared for in this country. We're not prepared for the economic burden that this disease has put on, where's Jen? How much? We just found out how much is it costing.
So in 2014, when you add up all the costs, it costs $214 billion to care for people with Alzheimer's disease.
There you go. And it's more, and it costs more to care for someone than with cancer. What was that statistic?
It's the most expensive disease in America.
It's now the most expensive disease in America. The most expensive disease in the United States. Most people don't have long-term care insurance. How many of you have long-term care insurance? The younger you are, the better it is to get it when you're young. It's a lot less expensive, FYI. Those are the kind of things. 1 in 10 people will get the disease, correct? Am I right? 1 in 8. Sorry, 1 in 8 now. 1 in 8. So do the math. In this room alone. So if you think it's not going to happen to you, 1 in 8. So you have to start preparing financially for how this is going to happen. And can I just say this? Quit thinking that your kids are going to be the ones to do it. And first of all, if you really think about it late at night, do you really want your kids to be the ones to do it? You're like, no. By the way, the average age that a male now in the United States leaves his home, his parents' home, is 28. 28. And the only reason he's in that house is because someone is letting him in. That's the only reason. So it's not his fault. Someone's letting him in the house. Mijo this, mijo that, laundry, enchiladas, tacos, everything in the morning. That's crazy. It's a burden on families. I'm not talking about the son anymore. We're talking about this. United States, we value productivity. This is one of the reasons we have to contend so much with ageism. And just the negative ways in which we not only look at dementia, but how we look at growing older. If you're no longer seen as a valued and productive member of society, then there's really no, the United States doesn't really see any need for you. We put so much importance on being productive ourselves that we don't get in bed till 1 o'clock in the morning. Now some of you are caregivers, that's probably more understandable. But this desire to be doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. The moral principle, we talked about that. Who bears the responsibility? Well, we know who bears the responsibility. I spoke to Josefina Carvajal. Do y'all know the name?
Yes.
She was actually the Secretary of Aging under the Bush administration. She's from Miami. She came to speak at a conference that we did in San Marcos. And here's what she said. I actually picked her up at the airport. We had some great conversations. And she said, I'm caring for my 92-year-old mother now in my home. And she said, I'm lucky because I have the money to do so. And I said, what do you mean by that? She said, we pay 24/7 for 3 caregivers round the clock. $6,800 a month. Who has that kind of money? I mean, there are people that do. But I mean, the normal everyday American does not have that kind of money. I mean, when 95% of American wealth is owned by 5% of the people, we don't have that kind of money. Reagan had that kind of money. So you're thinking, can you get your brothers and sisters to donate enough money to come up to $6,000? Let's talk about these 3 things when we start looking ethically at this end-of-life care. Autonomy. They acknowledge a person's right to make choices, to hold views, and take actions based on personal values and beliefs. The person has a right, if they're still able to do so, to make those decisions. This is why it's important early on in our lives to let people know what it is we want. Or someone else is going to do it for you. That's how I got my mother to move out of her house after she was about to kill herself living there alone. I said, you move out of this house, Mom. If you don't want to move out, that's fine. That's your decision. But if you stay here longer, someone else is going to make it for you. And it clicked with her. She said, okay, when can I go? Because for some people, that's going to particularly work. For others, it's not. You know, and it took me a long time to kind of get her to that point where something different needed to happen. I think it was the last time she called me at 10:30 at night and said, I can't get my TV to work. My remote's not working. Now that was okay, except that I was the kind of person who would get in the car and go fix it, which was 25 minutes from my home. And I got there and she opened the door, she said, I got it. With the remote in her hand, I got it. And I'm like, okay. Didn't even invite me in, like, good night, and she shuts the door. Good night. Those are the kind of things you think about. Prison, 3 meals a day, maybe not so bad. But anyway, beneficence, this is just acts on behalf, this is how you acting on the behalf of that vulnerable person to protect their rights, prevent harm, to create a safe and supportive environment. This is a right, ethically, this is a right that they have these rights, and hopefully you're providing that for them. Hopefully you're able to provide that for them. But at some point you may feel like you can't do this anymore. And you know, that's the thing that I want to talk about just real quickly. When you feel truly like that you're done, you cannot do this anymore, you need to give yourself permission to feel like it's okay to go to the next level. So many people don't get to that next level. Because I promised her, I promised him, I said I never would, I said I never. That's another conversation, another talk that we can do. But it's important to remember that. We want our actions to benefit the person that we're caring for and that we're taking care of. And of course, justice is treating others equitably and distribute the benefits accordingly so that nothing is going to burden the family. But the reality is the burden of the family is still going to lie there. There's not really much that you can do about that at the beginning, but you can try to minimize that as much as you can. And one of the reasons we have to have these conversations is because caregivers don't know when to say no anymore, and like I said earlier, and when to move on, and when to start seeking that help, and when to start getting those resources. If I said to you today to put on a calendar, a 30-day calendar, once a week, that you're going to do something for yourself for 3 hours. Let's say twice a month, 3 hours. I challenge you to figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, then you don't have the support you need. Now, you can't make perfect brothers and sisters and friends fall out of the sky. We can't. But you've got to use the support of the things that we've talked about today and start reaching out to the Alzheimer Association and whoever you can. Friends at church, find people to help you do this. You have to start asking. So if you can't figure that out, then find 3 people in your life right now, outside of the people living in your home. Find 3 people in your life who are 3 o'clock in the morning friends. Who are 3 o'clock in the morning friends? 3 o'clock in the morning friends. Friends that you can pick up the phone at any time of day and they're going to be there for you. They're going to listen to you. They're going to be there for you. Find people that can help you with this situation. Because if you're saying no to me, I don't think you're trying hard to try to find support. Unless you live on an island. Or you're going to be like that. Don't make finding people like that black box in that Malaysian plane. I mean, a month to find it. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, you can find friends faster than that. And if you can't find friends, maybe it's because you're not easy to be friends with. And don't go to the bar and try to find drunk people to come and help you with your mom and your dad or whoever. Hey, what are you doing Saturday and Sunday? I want to go out. Come stay with my mom. I'm just saying to you, try to find people, call the church, call whoever you need to call, start looking, call the Alzheimer Association, find volunteers, find someone. I don't know. I'm not sure why, when you're saying no, I'm sure you have your reasons, but you can overcome those. Why do you think it's hard for people to make those calls? Why do you think it's hard? Guilt? Not trusting? A good answer? Feel like a failure. You're the only one that can do it.
It's all of those. Well then, fear, failure.
All of them.
Didn't live up to your commitment. What goes around comes around. Pick one. Anyway,
Yeah.
It's all of them.
I think that those are what we've been talking about today, in trying to look at some of those issues and trying to work through those issues. Those are things you have to start working through on your own. And those are the things that become habits of thinking in your head. And then it becomes reality for you. And then it's difficult to change. It becomes a habit. You know how hard it is to break habits? We all know how hard it is to break bad habits. And once that becomes a habit, then you have to work on changing that habit. We turn finally to what might be the saddest of the tragedies we've been reviewing. This is what he says: we must consider the autonomy and best interest of people who suffer from serious and permanent dementia. Those people who cannot make those decisions for themselves any longer. Remember what I was talking about? When someone has to make those decisions for them. And at some point, and it's very difficult, because sometimes it's in between, in the sense that you know that they can't really make good decisions, or they can't make decisions at all, but they still know how to tell you, no, I don't want to do that. But their judgment is impaired. So we respond to them, especially if you're an adult child. You respond when your parents say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that, because that's what you're really hearing. No, you can't do that. Just like they've been telling us most of our lives, as teenagers, as kids, no, you can't do that. So we feel like we want to respect our parents. We want to respect what they're saying to us. And that's good that you feel that way and you want to do that. But at some particular point, that decision that you have to make it on your own. Even if they're saying no. No, I'm not giving you my car keys. No, I'm not giving you my checkbook. No, I'm not going to let you give me a shower or a bath. You've got to figure out a way to make it happen. And be okay with the fact that you're doing the very best thing for them. That the decision you're making is in their best interest. If you can go to sleep that night and say to yourself, the decision I made is best for him or for her, then you're okay. Because you know in your heart what that decision is. And you know it might be the best thing for them. It's just all the guilt and all the other stuff we just finished talking about up here that makes us doubt that. That makes us think that it's different. So at some point, with autonomy, they can't make those decisions. And when we get to that further into their end of life, those decisions are going to fall on you. You have to be prepared for them. No matter what stages that they're in, even in those late stages, they can still enjoy comfort. Brushing their hair, combing their hair, doing their nails, keeping them clean, putting makeup on the women if they like that, or the men if they like it too. Whatever the situation might be, whatever it is that they want. You know, maybe hand massage or foot massage, whatever it's going to be to make them comfortable. That level of comfort is important. I did a talk last week at for 269 people over the age of 70 who were there. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, "What can I do about loneliness? I'm so lonely." And then she said, and the second question is, after I answered that one, that was difficult. The second one was, nobody touches me anymore since my husband died. Well, that just made me really sad. Of course, I gave her a big hug. She said, you know what she said? I have to pay for people to touch me. I go get a haircut because I miss touch and get my hair washed, my hair done, and I get a manicure and a pedicure. And I was glad she stopped there. Wasn't quite sure what else she was going to tell me. I was a little bit worried. So touch. Those of you who are in healthcare understand and have known professionally how important touch is. How important touch is to the seniors. And getting touched other than getting bathed and dressed and showered and fed and given medication. You know, just a little, one of my friends that works in a nursing home as a physical therapy assistant talks about that her patients will always ask her to, have to scratch their back. And then I started thinking about that. Man, my back, you've got to get someone that you can't reach that spot. You want someone to scratch it for you. I thought, oh my gosh, what do you do when you can't? There's no one there to do that anymore, like a bear against the wall. And, and if you're older, you're going to fall. And then, and you can't get up and your back's still, I go there. That's what happens. Remembering things like power of attorney for healthcare, medical, get the best legal advice that you can. Make sure that those things are written. Not only do for, but to be with. There's a difference where we talked about a little bit about this early. When you're with them is very different if you're just doing for them. But be with them there. Have a conversation even if they're not talking back. Have the conversation you wish you were having with them, even if it's one-sided. Remember that trip we took? Remember that great place we used to love to go eat? Remember that vacation spot we had so much fun with the kids at? Remember we used to all hang around and eat tamales? Remember we used to go to, Walmart? We don't do that anymore. I don't know if that's fun, but, anyway. It might have been fun for you. I'm not sure. It's difficult sometimes to accept the person with dementia and affirming and creative ways. Accepting who they are. And trying to remember that there's still something in there that maybe you can reach to and kind of get to. My mother, one day when she was staying with us for the weekend, she said, you remember this song? And I can't repeat it. It's in Spanish. I can say it in Spanish, but it's not rated, it's rated R. She just came up with this song about a rabbit. El Conejo, remember that one? Anybody? Okay, anyway. I'll tell you later. So, it just was an old memory for her, and it made her laugh, and she thought it was funny. And those are the kind of things you can kind of start bringing up. I try to remember a lot of those things to help my mother kind of recall those things that were so important to her at a time in her life that was important to her. She was a principal for elementary principal. She was a secretary for an elementary school in the principal's office, and so she loves to talk about how she ran the school. I ran that school. I knew everything, and she loved it. She did. I think she did, and it's important to her. And she likes to talk about school districts in San Antonio because she remembers when they divided the school districts up. And so those are the kind of conversations you can kind of start having. It's a creative way to kind of have discussions and kind of keep her mind going to some extent. And by the way, I told her the other day, I said, Mom, she said, I said, there are things you can do to keep your brain going. And she said, my brain's already going. So you have to kind of think of how you're going to say kind of some of those things as well. Loyalty is something you probably have to some extent. Even when you think you can't do it anymore. And when you do have somebody to come over maybe 8 hours on a Saturday to take care of that person, it's still hard for you to walk out of that room, isn't it? It's still hard for you to leave them there for the weekend, or a day, or a couple of hours. It's still difficult. And part of it is because you're worried that something's going to happen on your watch. Maybe. Part of it is because of its guilt. Part of it is because you're the only one, you think you're the only one who knows how to do it right. Whatever the reasons might be, you have to give yourself permission to do those things. Watch your gestures and your body language. We talked about that earlier. And desire to do aid and be protective. I mean, that is a desire you have. I mean, you do want to be protective of them. You do want to make sure that they're safe. You do want to make sure that you're there if they need anything. And those are things to remember to keep in mind too. Of course, you know, our tone of voice, this is kind of some of the things we talked about. But you don't want it to be a fake voice either. That kind of fake voice that I talked about. And you don't want it to be demeaning, as if you're speaking to children. Whether you believe it or not, you're still talking to adults. Never forget that. You're still talking to an adult. How do you all act when someone starts to talk to you in that tone of voice? Okay, calm down. Those are fighting words, man. Pay attention to the small but gratifying needs. Sometimes it's just something very, very small that they really enjoy doing. I had pecans last year. I had them out. My mother was like, she wanted to peel pecans. She loved sitting there messing with those pecans. It's nothing. It wasn't any big deal, but boy, it took a lot. She liked it. And she spent a lot of time doing that. Whether she admits it or not, she likes doing socks too, folding socks. She likes looking for the pairs. She enjoys that. So find those small things. I have an uncle who has dementia too, who likes to work with, he's an electrical engineer. So you give him like a radio with a bunch of stuff in it that doesn't work. And you know it's never going to work, but he'll sit there and try to make that radio work. He just loves those kind of, and he has all this kind of stuff laying out on his table. You know, it's just amazing. Something small. I think this will be the last slide. We talked about stigma already, and the important thing is truth telling. Only you know the truth to how you're experiencing this and what it is you're experiencing and what it is you're going through. But you've got to find somebody to tell that truth to. You know, and you're going to never feel like anyone understands it because they're not doing it. Your siblings, you're going to feel like your siblings don't understand it because they're not doing it. Whoever it is you can find to tell that truth to, and what it is you're feeling, and how it makes you feel, and the challenges that you have, and the challenges that you're experiencing, and the times that you just need to cry, and the times you need to get that tennis racket and hit it on the couch, whatever it is you particularly need to do, find that time to do it. And if you can't find the time to do it, I still believe that that responsibility falls on you to find that time. Find someone else who can help you to find that time. I mean, that's the one thing that we have to continue to remember. I thank you all. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for the therapy session. I appreciate it.